The winner is Marlon Brando's On the Waterfront.
Say the name Marlon Brando, and you can almost hear the rumble of a voice that changed what movie stardom looked like. He was the actor who could turn stillness into tension, who made audiences lean in, and who left behind a filmography that still feels like required viewing. But outside the frame, his life was rarely tidy. Behind the awards, the headlines, and the myth of the untouchable genius, there was a personal world filled with overlapping relationships, children spread across different households, and long stretches of silence that kept outsiders guessing. For years, stories about hidden branches of his family tree floated around like Hollywood folklore, partly because so many people close to him stayed quiet. Today, we are going to follow what happens when those private threads finally get pulled into the open, because when Brando's secret children come forward, they confirm a hidden life as dramatic as any role. From Omaha to The Method.
We act to save our lives, actually, every day. People lie constantly, every day, by not saying something that they think, or saying something that they don't think, or showing something that they don't feel, or trying to give the appearance of feeling something that they don't actually. I said that, didn't I?
Yeah, but that's not acting.
That is acting. That is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
But you know what I mean.
When you're
what you do on the screen,
when you're nervous,
huh?
When you're frightened and nervous in this chair, or you're distressed or uncomfortable, or you're very angry.
Yeah.
And you know that is not what is necessary to what cannot be shown here. You control your face. You're a highly controlled person. And
really?
Brando liked to explain acting in plain, almost primal terms, like it was tied to the same instincts that help a person navigate danger, desire, and survival. And he always circled back to the idea that you're not helpless in the process. You can steer the outcome if you understand what is driving you. That's a fascinating claim coming from a man whose public image often looked like pure impulse. Brando was born in Omaha in 1924 and grew up in Illinois before a rough school path pushed him towards New York. He studied with Stella Adler at Lee Strasberg's Actors Studio, absorbing the method approach that drills into what a character wants and why they move the way they do. That training exploded on Broadway when he played Stanley Kowalski, then carried into Hollywood with The Men, Viva Zapata, Julius Caesar, and The Wild One. On screen, he was not a polished matinee idol. He felt physical, volatile, and dangerously honest. Fame, however, did not make him cooperative. He resisted the publicity machine and developed a reputation for self-indulgence. In the early 60s, Mutiny on the Bounty became a public example, with reports of tantrums, script fights, distance from the crew, and a contract that even paid him for production delays. That mix of genius and turbulence matters because it followed him everywhere. When a person refuses limits in public, it rarely stays contained, and Brando's off-camera life grew just as unwieldy as his legend. A household that kept changing.
In the book, you talk about his bringing home a young woman that he was having an affair with while you were married.
Yes.
What were the circumstances? How did that happen? I mean, isn't that an awful brazen thing to do?
It is very brazen, and it shocked me. I was very pregnant at the time, and the girl was France Nguyen, I remember. I was just in my lounging pajamas. I just got up from bed, and I wasn't looking my best, and in walks this very glamorous girl, and I thought, I don't like that too much.
Brando married 3 times, all to actresses, and rarely spoke in detail about those relationships. What did become widely reported was the size of his family. He was said to have at least 11 children, including 5 with his wives, 3 with a Guatemalan housekeeper, and 3 from affairs. One sentence from his son Christian captures the atmosphere at home. Quote, "The family kept changing shape. I'd sit down at the breakfast table and say, 'Who are you?' It sounds like a punchline, but it also describes a place where new faces could appear without warning. In that kind of environment, secrecy is not a single decision, it becomes routine. Some children are introduced to the world, others are protected by distance, and everyone learns which questions not to ask in front of outsiders. That's why later claims about secret children never land as a single surprise. The shocking part is the scale of the arrangement and how normal it seemed inside the house, even while the public only saw the star. rage, appetite, and control.
Get up, you scum-sucking pig. You mention her once more, and I'm going to tear your arms out.
Brando's personal life was often described as driven by extremes, including a love of food and a pattern of womanizing. Those habits did not just create gossip. They created a trail of separate relationships that could overlap, collapse, and leave children and partners to handle the aftermath. His intensity also shaped how people experienced him professionally. Even decades after his early peak, co-stars talked about the weight he carried into a room. David Thewlis put it simply, when he walks into a room, you know he's around. That kind of presence can feel thrilling, but it also can make everyone else smaller. In families and on sets, power creates silence, and silence creates gaps where private truths can hide for years. When people later speak about being connected to him, what often comes through is not a neat revelation, but a familiar pattern. Attention could be generous one day and absent the next, with money offered as proof of care, while emotional steadiness stayed out of reach. The courtroom years and a family collapse.
He said, I killed Dag. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, he's dead, Pop. I didn't mean to do it.
Tragedy forced the family into public view. In 1991, Christian Brando was convicted of voluntary manslaughter in the death of his sister's fiancé, Dag Drollett, and received a 10-year sentence. Christian claimed he was defending his pregnant sister Cheyenne from abuse, and that the shooting was accidental during a struggle. Brando was in the house, gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and called 911. On the witness stand, he offered a line that sounds plain but carries a lifetime of regret. I tried to be a good father. I did the best I could. Cheyenne's struggles were widely reported, with time in rehabilitation centers and mental hospitals. She also spoke bitterly about her childhood, saying, quote, I have come to despise my father for the way he ignored me as a child. After Drollett's death, a judge ruled she was too depressed to raise her child, and custody went to her mother, Tarita. In 1995, she hanged herself during a family visit. For anyone on the edges of this family, those headlines were a warning about what fame could not prevent. Money, illness, and why stories surface.
Has a price in the marketplace, and so do cars, so do hula hoops, so do useless endeavors, and I don't suppose that actors are any different than rock bands that inflate balloons from their ears, and that happens to catch on. It's what people want to buy.
Brando's career rebounded with his portrayal of Don Corleone in 1972, and he famously refused to accept the Oscar in person, sending Sacheen Littlefeather to decline it as a protest about Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans. He later earned huge salaries for smaller parts in films like Superman and Apocalypse Now. As the years went on, his health deteriorated, and by the mid-1990s, he weighed well over 300 pounds. He died of pulmonary fibrosis in 2004 at age 80. As his life closed, the practical questions opened, including estates, debts, and what was owed to whom. This is the stage when more private accounts tend to emerge. When a powerful figure is gone, fear can loosen. When paperwork is reviewed, connections become harder to ignore. When siblings compare notes, they realize how many separate lives were tied to the same father. So the shocking confirmation is not just that the family was big, it's that the secrecy around it was built into the way he lived, leaving children to decide years later whether silence protected them or erased them. Now it's time to hear from you. When you look at Marlon Brando's towering talent alongside the reports of a constantly shifting household and children kept in the shadows, what part of the story surprises you the most? Let us know in the comments section below.